Hello and welcome to the interview here on France 24. Our guest is Dicki Chhoyang, who is the Minister of International Relations and of Information of the government of Tibet in exile. Thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure.
You are in Europe to rally support for your cause. Tall order nowadays as China is flexing its economic and diplomatic muscles with Western governments and telling them to stay away from this very sensitive issue. You are officially advocating for autonomy for Tibet, an option rejected by Beijing, which accuses you of separatism. First of all, can you bring us up to date on the situation in Tibet? People have seen those images of people self-immolating. I believe 133 have done so since the crackdown in 2009. Can you tell us about the situation in Tibet? Journalists, foreign journalists do not have access there, and so we'd be happy to learn more about what's going on.
The situation in Tibet with its human rights violation problems has been going on for now over 50 years. And what the self-immolations indicate since 2009 is that the situation is just as bad as ever, in the sense that there is repression, political repression, cultural assimilation, economic marginalization, a lack of religious freedom, and also environmental destruction. What is very particular about the self-immolation is, historically, this is unprecedented for Tibetans. The self-immolation are a solitary act of protest, political protest. And what the Tibetan people are trying to say through these actions is to send an unequivocal message to the international community that Beijing needs to reevaluate its policies in the Tibetan areas. For the Central Tibetan administration, we've appealed to Tibetans from the beginning not to have recourse to such drastic actions. While we don't support these actions, we feel a moral duty to make sure that the international community understands the reasons behind these actions.
So you're condemning those actions?
You know, we're discouraging them. We are not encouraging them. We are very relieved that it seems to have slowed down. We have also constantly appealed to the central Chinese government to look into the causes behind the self-immolation, because while we can discourage Tibetans, we don't have the power to change the policies that are leading them to act this way.
Is the crackdown in Tibet now maybe worse than ever? Would you describe it this way, or?
I think that the repression is continuing. And it is worsening in the sense that, people, it's limited access to foreign reporters. We don't know what's going on. We know that they are cracking down on people who protest politically. They're cracking down on people who are protesting against mining projects. We know that they're cracking down on artists and writers who write about political repression and who are suspected of leading political protests through the lyrics of their songs. Just yesterday, somebody who was arrested and sentenced to 12 years for having taken part in the 2008 demonstrations died 2 days after being released from jail. He was only 6 years into his 12-year sentence. So these are instances where it's very worrying, and it's very clear that prisoners are often tortured, yes.
Is there any hope of a dialogue with Beijing? The dialogue was cut off in 2010. It seems we're going nowhere in terms of dialogue. Or is there maybe hope that eventually something can be started?
Oh, we remain always optimistic in the sense that if Beijing is realistic, they have to realize that sooner or later they have to address the Tibet issue in a way that is constructive and
Why
peaceful.
would they need to address it?
Because
China is doing fine, politically, economically, diplomatically. Why would they need to address Tibet?
I think that, China aspires to be a global power, both politically, economically. What it's not obtaining right now is the moral authority and respect. And amongst these reasons is the way that it's addressing the issue of Tibet.
But do they really care?
I think they will care sooner or later, because the issue of Tibet is not going to go away. It's not going to go away. And, as it seeks to assert itself, how can it assert itself as a global power if it cannot assure other countries and people around the world that it is a peaceful people, peaceful government, when you are conducting repressive policies in your own country?
The Dalai Lama recently described the new president of China, Xi Jinping, as someone who is realist and open-minded. Is it wishful thinking, or is there really ground to believe that the new president could be more flexible on Tibet than his predecessors?
Well, what's clear is that based on his personal background, unlike other Chinese leaders, he does have a greater degree of familiarity with Tibetan culture, Tibetan Buddhism. And also, I think that he wants the best for China, and he's a realist, and that he will realize that sooner or later, if China doesn't address the issue of Tibet, it's an issue that is not going to go away, and it will harm its hopes to establish itself as a peaceful nation.
Did he or his entourage reach out to you to indicate that there might be a good reason to sit down at a table together?
Well, the Chinese government has been very clear that they will not resume dialogue with representative of the Central Tibetan Administration. And for us, that's fine. If there was a resumption, it would be with the envoys of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And for us, that is fine as well, because the priority for us is that the dialogue is resumed.
But is there even maybe an informal dialogue going on right now? Because on the official level, nothing is happening.
Yes. Unlike the past, there is a lot of informal exchanges through the travels and the meetings that take place with Chinese citizens from mainland, from Hong Kong, from Taiwan. And I'm sure that there is information that is circulating back and forth in terms of how we can find a solution that's mutually acceptable. The middle way, what we're proposing is that all the Tibetan areas be under one administrative jurisdiction within the PRC, and that we have local decision-making power in 11 areas related to cultural identity, like religion, culture, education, public security, health, migration, also the development of resources. So these are issues that we know are doable. It's all within the framework of China's constitution. And if there is a political will, there will certainly be a solution.
For the moment, it's been difficult for you to rally support. Many countries, especially in Europe, are struggling economically, and they are seeking Chinese investments. And in return, they're often not receiving Tibetan representatives in the most official way. We've seen in Norway. Norway has welcomed the Dalai Lama for years. A few months ago, the Prime Minister said, no, I'm not going to meet the Dalai Lama because I want to resume relationship with China. The French president, for instance, has not received the Dalai Lama. Is there a problem for you in the sense that Western governments are driven by their economic interests, maybe more than by their moral obligations?
Well, I think it really varies from the individual who holds office. I don't think that the position of one leader at this moment is necessarily the position that a country will adopt forever. Take, for example...
But it must be disappointing for you to see European leaders turn their back to the...
It's unfortunate, but, it's basically individual courage and wisdom. You take people like U.S. President Obama met His Holiness, Prime Minister Harper in Canada met His Holiness. It's individual courage and also the ability to say we are not seeking independence. Often we've noticed governments and diplomats and even members of the press are not aware about the middle way approach. And this is why we've developed this website and material so that people clearly understand what it's about.
But do you think Europe is not playing its moral role? France is often described as the country of human rights, and on this issue they seem to have maybe a blank spot.
Well, I think what Europeans need to be reminded is that the freedom they enjoy now has been so hard-earned and hard-won, and they have to protect that freedom by remaining independent and taking decisions based on their own values. And I think that is very important to remind the public of. And also that when it comes to the issue of Tibet, it's not a choice between China and Tibet, unlike what the Chinese government makes it look like. If you are a friend of China, you should remind them to resolve the issue of Tibet because it is in China's interest.
You would imagine yourself living within the framework of China in the future?
Yes, absolutely. If they can agree to these conditions that we've put in the Memorandum on Genuine Autonomy that guarantees the protection of our distinct cultural identity, why not?
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for watching this interview here on France 24. Stay tuned for more news.